We are often told that the theory of evolution and Christian faith don't go well together. After all, based on the book of Genesis, all Christians must believe that the universe was created in 6 days and that the earth is only a couple of thousand years old. But must they? Not at all. Christians are not committed to a literal interpretation of the creation story of Genesis. And I don't mean nowadays, but since the very beginning of the church. Let us look at two important early Christian thinkers to argue for this. Origen of Alexandria, who was born in the 2nd century after Christ, is considered by many as one of the greatest geniuses of the early church. He spent a great deal of time studying the Bible and reflecting on the interpretation of its different books. What did he have to say about the creation story? Let us quote him. Who is there possessed of understanding that will regard the statement as appropriate that the first day and the second and the third, in which also both evening and morning are mentioned, existed without sun and moon and stars, the first day even without a sky? His point is clear. Since in the creation story the sun and the moon appear only on the 4th day, how long did a day last before that? It makes no sense to interpret the duration of the creation of the world as literally lasting a couple of days. But he goes further. And who is found so ignorant as to suppose that God, as if he had been a husbandman, planted trees in paradise? No one, I think, can doubt that the statement that God walked in the afternoon in paradise and that Adam lay hid under a tree is related figuratively in Scripture, that some mystical meaning may be indicated by it. Origen argues that the first chapters of Genesis have a mystical meaning and should be interpreted in a figurative sense, not literally. Keep in mind that the text we just read was written around the year 220, over 1500 years before Charles Darwin was born. But let me quote another Christian thinker, this time from the 4th century and even more influential than Origen, Saint Augustine. He was convinced that even though a lot of wisdom may be extracted from the first chapters of Genesis, they are by no means a literal or historical account of the creation of the universe. In his book, De Genesi ad Litteram, he writes, for instance, "When we think of the first creation of creatures, we must not think that those days were like the solar days, nor that the same work was like the present work of God. But we must think of the way in which he worked in the beginning, as he operated in creating all things at once." Saint Augustine thought that the universe came to be in one instant, and not over 6 24-hour days. And I hope that by now it is clear that Christian thinkers in the early church, long before Darwin, were not committed to a literal interpretation of the book of Genesis. Moreover, Saint Augustine, who was a firm proponent of the theory of seminal reasons, would have had no problem with evolution. In fact, one may even go so far as to argue that the theory of evolution fits better with the nature of God, as Darwin himself wrote in the 2nd edition of The Origin of Species. I quote him, "There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one." After all we have said, what is the official doctrine of the Catholic Church on the topic of evolution? I think you can summarize it as yes to evolution, but no to evolutionism. There is no problem in considering the theory of evolution as a good explanation for the origin of the different species and the material part of man, its body. But Catholics don't go so far as to give in to evolutionism, by which I mean the doctrine of those who consider human beings as nothing more than the product of evolution. I already made 2 videos arguing why humans are not reducible to matter and what the negative consequences may be of such a worldview. So check the description of this video if you are interested. To summarize what I just said, let me quote Humani Generis from Pope Pius XII in the year 1950. The teaching authority of the Church does not forbid that research and discussions take place with regard to the doctrine of evolution, in as far as it inquires into the origin of the human body as coming from pre-existent and living matter. But the Catholic faith obliges us to hold that souls are immediately created by God. If before watching this video you thought that evolution and Christianity were bitter enemies, I hope this gave you some new ideas to think about. Take care and see you in the next video.